Hi, Kat. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for joining. I was so excited for our chat today. So I know Chris and Brian ran a little bit over, so I'm gonna just jump right in if you don't mind.
Not at all. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So for the viewers tuning in, Kat is a tenured marketing maven, having spent her career at both Google and now Meta. So Kat, I'd love to understand what motivated you to shift your focus into e-commerce.
So I was at Google for about 8 years before joining Meta, and I've been at Meta now 7 years. But at Google, my career spanned a lot of different verticals. I was in tech telco, brand, uh, tech telco, which is DR, and then I moved on to CPG and pharma, which is more on the brand side. And after about 8 years, I really wanted to expand a little bit and go back to my DR roots. And then Meta, of course, I'd never worked in social. I'd worked in search, I'd worked in YouTube and video, but social was an area that I didn't know very well. And this opportunity came up. And the reason I really wanted to switch into ecom was because when I was on tech telco, I really enjoyed working with the DR element, and there was some brand. I worked on the AT&T business, so there was both of them. But I wanted to expand my horizons and sort of broaden my experience because e-commerce is not just about marketing and product marketing, customer acquisition and retention, but it's also really deeply understanding sort of the supply chain and understanding pricing and profit management and customer service. And I've been excited by it ever since. And 7 years later, I can't imagine doing anything different.
That's amazing. I don't know if you were tuning into the last session, but Brian from Talk Shop Live, he mentioned that how interesting 15 years ago we're talking about what's our social media strategy. And I remember running when I was an assistant media planner, running did programmatic display and invite media, which is now DV360. So it's interesting how how time flies. And now, yes, we're talking about our live shopping strategies. So, which brings me to my next question, bluntly asking, why live shopping and why now?
So I did join the last session, and I honestly, I was like, Brian is saying it the better than I could ever say it. And I agree with him. I think in a few years in North America, we are going to be talking about live shopping. But for me, I agree. I think it's its infancy right now. It is really the early days, and that's what excites me most about it, because I can see even early on that it really has the power to transform the shopping experience. It brings together this immersive entertainment brand experience, but then it also has the power to kind of convert browsers to converters. So then it blends that entertainment piece with the instant purchasing. And I think that's the most exciting thing for me. As a marketer, I love that I could truly say it's a full funnel
Yes.
experience. But as a consumer, I just love watching it. And it is truly an experience to be a part of a group that's looking at something and asking questions and ultimately hopefully buying something from either the creator or the host. So I
Yeah.
think now is the moment to be in on this.
I agree. Now's the time to test. I think I couldn't agree more. I think it serves many purposes, and I think Christina touched upon it in an earlier session or around it's another access point, right? And never lose sight of the ultimate goal. So what's purpose is live shopping going to serve in your full funnel. So I love that. And as we think about the products, knowing that we are in a nascent stage right now, and we're thinking about the evolution of products, how are Facebook and Instagram thinking about the product evolution as it relates to live shopping?
So I think for the most part today, we're really focused on building sort of personal immersive shopping experiences. And I think live shopping is a part of that. I think drops, AR, try on, these are all a part of those experiences. I think long term, these investments will be sort of what the foundation looks like and what we are talking about as the metaverse. So the goal ultimately is to remove any kind of physical constraints between the digital world and the retail world, and then really bring all this together. So I imagine a world where one day AR and VR can truly make the shopping experience in a way that is so immersive that you can enable, for example, just imagine you can enable buyers to see a product from every angle. Or imagine a world also where consumers may be able to have a virtual face-to-face with an influencer or creator and talk about it right there in real time with their VR sets. I think that's ultimately where the world that we envision.
I think
For
I
e-commerce.
love that. I love that. I think, and it was also in an earlier session, it was talked about some brands actually see success with the more expensive products. And I think having that ability and the technology to have that fully immersive and interactive nature with, if I'm going to spend thousands of dollars on a handbag, which I am not in the market for, but, you know, imagining I am, you know, I'd want to be able to, as much as I can, feel and touch it, you know, in an AR capacity, to before making my decision, because it's a big decision, you know.
I agree. I think the next area is really that AR or VR try on, because
Yeah.
I think of it, you know, like you go, the experience of walking into any store where you want it. I'm going to just use makeup as an example. I'd love to see it in real time on me before I buy it.
Agreed.
And it's really hard to do that, especially like in the past couple of years.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's finding the right shades and yeah, seeing what was going to look good. Exactly. I couldn't agree more. And I think the AR component in beauty is important. Personally, one of my experiences was I walked into a beauty store and they have the try-on products in the front of the aisles that are communal, which is
Yeah.
not that hygienic, but the company had AR try-on screens next to each display, which I thought was amazing for try on and then keeping the hygienic nature of the products as well.
Beautiful. Now imagine just doing that from your home instead of even having to walk into a store. I think
Absolutely.
It's both. You have to have both experiences.
Agreed. Yes, for sure. Okay, so now diving a little bit into Facebook and Instagram's processes. So understanding, so Facebook and Instagram both have their own processes for live shopping. What are the biggest hurdles for adoption on both either the consumer or brand side?
The biggest hurdles that we've seen or are hearing from clients, there's about 4, I would say, but the first one is it's unclear sometimes where live lives. It's not clear whether it's with the paid marketing team at a brand, if it's with a content team, if it's with an organic team. And so some of that causes us to lose momentum, or causes the brand to lose momentum. The other hurdle is really tech resources. So we find many times that brands are super interested in doing a live, but they don't have the tech resources to produce a live, or they have the tech resources, but the prioritization puts it off lower in the queue. Thirdly, I would say it's the understanding of the creative recipe. So it is very specific how you can make a live successful, and we need to do a lot of education on what is that creative element and how to make it successful. And then I would say, lastly, there is a lift, or some brands are expressing somewhat of a concern about the lift it takes to execute a live, with the right tech, with the creative, with the ops resources in-house to produce it. So those are basically, I think, the 4 hurdles that we see. Mostly, though, people are interested, brands are interested. It's just getting past some of those in order to execute.
Yeah, I think the talent is going to be critical as well, critical component. The hurdles of talent and technology are both very, very critical to get past in terms of getting adoption to get on the up and up.
Yeah, and I think actually that is another, like, you have to have the right host or creator, have whatever terminology we're going to use, but it has to be the right person to do a live and to be successful at a live.
Absolutely. I think also, you know, in the influencer marketing space ourselves, I think what's interesting to see is people that are great in front of the camera, that's not a telltale indicator of whether they're going to be successful as a live host. So it's really unpacking these additional triggers on our end when we're sourcing and in our technology to figure out what is going to make that great host, in addition to being an authentic match to the brand. So lots of key considerations. I agree with those hurdles that you outlined. I think the biggest piece to get over is talent and tech. And then, because the production is a whole different thing in and of itself. And I saw this YouTube video from China where they converted a WeWork into just a production studio. So each conference room was a different studio, and everyone was doing their live shopping. And I thought that was an interesting take as well.
That's amazing. I'd love to see that. That's really cool. Yeah,
the production's there, you know, so it's interesting. Well, that's great. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. How do you educate and entice creators then to launch live on Meta, knowing that there are these, you know, production hurdles and everything?
Yeah. So live shopping is super aligned to what creators already do. They already have the dedicated social following who wants to, interact with their content and interact with the creator. So but the thing that we focus most on is the education piece. And like we've been talking, there's like some nuances for a live that you really have to educate the creators on. So just as an example, our best recommendation right now is to go live for 30 minutes or less. And we really recommend that you segment your content into easily consumable, like small chapters. So that when a viewer comes in at any moment, they can kind of start the process with you. We also recommend things like waiting a few minutes before the start of a broadcast and your main content, because it takes a while to build up an audience, especially if you're using paid media to support it. So it's really a good idea during that opening to have the creator welcome people, have a countdown clock to let the viewers know that the show will start soon. And these are the kind of things that we really need to share with the creators to execute like very successful live. And that's what we're working the most on right now, is that education piece.
So true. Oh, Ethan. Yeah. I see Ethan saying so true. I was just thinking of you, Ethan, when I was hoping you were tuning in. So the way we think about this at Influential, and Ethan too, from your question. So I'm glad you brought that up, Kat, because it is really around that tune in messaging and putting that paid amplification up front to ensure that you are going to get as many viewers as you possibly can. But then there's also that remarketing play afterwards. So once you have that live content, it should absolutely live on and help you continue to tell that brand story and sell your products in a remarketing capacity. And so leveraging the custom audiences from the viewers from the live to then remessage and perhaps those personalized snippets of, okay, in this segment, I like how you mentioned the segments, because it'll be easy to cut it down in a snackable format for retargeting afterward.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it has to be a holistic program. I think that's another thing. It's not a situation where build it and they will come. You definitely have to include it as part of a bigger story.
Yep, absolutely. And speaking of bigger stories, as brands are working on their live strategies now, what do you think is the biggest value of consistent live shopping on Meta today?
So one of the things that we are in general finding is that when a partner does a live one time, that's not enough. Like you do have to have a 2, 3, 4 before you kind of get it, and then you want to continue doing it. So like retention for us is also important in the sense that like once it's just not enough experience to do it. So I think with live shopping, what it uniquely enables us is that exclusivity and interactivity. So it gives you this opportunity to move product while also building community and engagement. So in my opinion, like what is really unique about live versus any other video format, it's two things. One is that there's a time-bound nature of live that builds this anticipation and excitement around this happening now, one-time event, like urgency. And then the second thing is that synchronous presence of the host and the audience being together and interacting in real life and feeling a part of the community. So like to me, it's those two things plus the fact that you have to make it a part of a bigger program, that you're continuing down the effort, and it's not just this one-time thing that you do. Those are what makes consistent presence on Meta really powerful.
Yeah, I agree. I think that with the consistency comes the iterations of learning and developing your own best practices for the brand, right? In terms of, and I think with the one-off capacities, they could be great for the testing now to say, okay, let's maybe test this creator this one time and, and here and there. But I think I completely agree, the consistent strategy and that strategy being a part of a larger initiative. So it doesn't have to be your live shopping specific strategy. It can be a function of a larger initiative. Like when I also was mentioning their 21 days of beauty, right? I imagine there's direct mail component. There's like the promotion email. There's all these other channels that are integrated into their promotional strategy. And I think I see live shopping as that additional access point and creating additional, cohesion in your media mix, but in a strategic way. So thinking about it in terms of a larger, fueling a larger initiative.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I also think, again, once you do it a few times, you're hooked because you see the whole program at scale. You see that it can drive sales. You see it can drive branding. You see it can drive new customers, retention. I mean, it brings everything back together.
Yep. And what, in your opinion, what does a successful live event look like? Do we even know that yet? And is it more top funnel at this point, or are brands diving in right into the DR functionality of it?
I think it's both. I think the lives that I've seen are actually both top funnel and or full funnel. They're everything. So the most successful lives that I've seen is one. There's a few different elements. One is that you have to have a clear understanding of the audience you're speaking to. So, for example, you have to understand their need states and which products to feature. You must also kind of have an understanding of their purchase motivators, and you'll need to really, I think, go beyond the standard demographics. You don't want to just focus on age, gender, and income, but really more. There has to be a focus on the psychographics of the audience, their behavioral picture of what their ideal viewer is. So, what are their personalities? What do they value? What are their interests? Other things that we've noticed is how you hook in the audience to draw them in. So we talked about this a little bit already, but you're launching something that's limited time and it's exclusive. So you have to create that sense of urgency with special deals or discounts, and you're collaborating with creators to amplify and grow them. So you have to have a hook to bring them in. And then again, back to the thing what we talked about, it has to be a part of the bigger story there. Like, in addition to your big moment, you have to have a campaign that's focused on the content, that's multi-layered, that's like shoppable broadcast oriented, and where you've got maybe paid and organic all playing together to create that bigger story. So it's pretty much some of the stuff that we've talked about. That's what makes the live most successful.
Exactly. And I think when picking platforms like Meta and Instagram, it's also understanding how your consumer is already using Meta and Instagram with your brand. So on their own terms, and figuring out how to play into that. So you're hitting them where with messaging that matters to them when it matters to them.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
I would also say that probably of everything we discussed, of course, the bigger story does matter, but that audience piece, exactly what you talked about, is probably even higher in importance.
That's who's going to buy your products at the end of the day.
Right.
Exactly. Awesome. So speaking of creators too, so any advice to creators who are looking to add live shopping to their content repertoire?
So I would say to any creator is that you already have the content and you already have a loyal fan base. So live is just really another form of your content. So the key there is to be as authentic as possible, to be genuine, and to create that sort of genuine connection with your audience. I think the host personality, communication style, and expertise, those things go a really long way in building trust with the audience. So again, back to some sort of advice, like, you want to introduce yourself when you're talking, when you open a live, you want to talk about your connection to the live shopping show. You want, if there's a brand that's involved, you want to reinforce that authenticity of the brand and the host relationship, and you want to showcase sort of your expertise. And this goes back to something I said a little earlier as well, but it's really about keeping that audience engaged as much as possible, acknowledging them, thanking them for their time as they join. The reality is few people sit through and watch an entire live stream, probably like 30-40 minutes of it. So you need to plan to break your broadcast into those consumable segments. And you need to maybe consider things like a visual device, something that makes it clear when a segment is about to end or begin, or focus on audience participation to keep them engaged and then to keep them through to the end of the live.
Agreed.
I think we would tell the creators.
Yeah, I think that, and that's great. And I think also what we tell creators too is, and brands, as we're working together, is thinking about ways to keep them engaged around in the comments, or through chat functionality, or maybe it's not only testing up the live promotion to entice people to, or encourage people to remain tuned in, but maybe say, halfway in, we're going to be introducing a new deal, or limited edition drops, things like that. But we're seeing a lot of different strategies that are really interested, but all focused around keeping the audience engaged, as you mentioned.
And discounts, always That's one of the key key things that
Love,
work.
love a discount. If Banana Republic is tuned in, I still do not use my college ID to get a student discount there.
Amazing.
So what do you say to brands who may be hesitant to get started with live shopping due to brand safety concerns?
So in all honesty, I haven't really heard that from brands as it relates to live, but I think overall that the things that we talk about are all the ways that we're working really hard to prohibit harmful content on the platform and across both Facebook and Instagram. I think a couple of things that we're doing. So we've invested in a lot of AI systems and human review teams. We have more than 35,000 people right now working on safety and security. And the rate that we proactively detect and remove content before it's reported it has decreased, has steadily increased. Sorry, the rate has increased. So we've also taken a number of other steps, such as like publishing our community standards report, as well as we've established an oversight board, which really helps us determine some answers to the hardest questions we have, like what to take down, what to leave up, and why. So I think, those are the things we would focus on if someone did have a concern about that.
Excellent. I think, and it's interesting. This is why I love that we're chatting. So from the Meta angle, all of those measures, and you guys are taking it so seriously to make sure that you're implementing and improving. On our side, it's about the creators and educating the creators around what to say if there's a comment that's not so nice that comes through, how to navigate, and we coach the social team on how to navigate the comment monitoring throughout the lives. And so it's interesting because there's so many different angles to helping empower brands and creators to be on the platform and remain in a brand safe environment. And so it's interesting because we're fueling a full circle ecosystem in terms around brand safety between our companies.
Absolutely. No, I mean, it's really important as well. Like, I think one of the other things that we're doing, we're working with some industry bodies and other tech platforms like the Global Alliance for Responsible Media. And that has been really helpful because we help share knowledge, build consensus, and make the platform, and not just our platform, all platforms safer for users. So it's a really important part of the ecosystem for everyone.
Absolutely.
Everyone.
This next question is a bit of a mouthful, so bear with me. So, okay. So the questions are on insights. So what insights can businesses take away from live shopping streams, and how can they apply them to their strategies around both driving sales and building stronger customer relationships?
Yeah, so I would say like live shopping, some of the things, I'm going to give you specific examples of what we've seen, but live shopping can really provide a useful, sort of valuable feedback on products and products that customers want to see more or less of. So I think you can really use it as a feedback mechanism. So for example, we've seen brands use real-time voting to inform what products they should create next and what styles or colors. We've seen a lot of that. We've seen brands use quantitative sales data and then qualitative data like comments and engagement to guide inventory decisions, and then to also guide the future of other streams that are coming up. Some brands also have noticed, for example, that when they do a live on the weekend, it extends the weekend shelf life, and it drives to not just sales online, but also in store. So I think that's one of the most valuable things from a live, is the insights that you can get, in addition to the post. We've already talked about the retention piece, the post marketing that you can do with the video on demand to retarget those audiences. That's very marketing specific, but you also have a lot of like product specific insights that you can gain.
It's interesting. So you mentioned extending shelf life. So it's extending, in a way, earned media on shelf and online, because you have all of this content now you can just use and it's reposted and create that earned media potential.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I think part of it is the hurdle we talked about. Like, no one knows not no one knows, but people struggle with where it sits.
Right.
Because it's across the board where a program like this can sit.
I also liked what you said around real-time feedback. It made me think about social listening, and in terms of, and how valuable just listening to your consumers and how they're interacting with your brand, the types of questions they're asking just organically on the platform. where do I buy this? How do I, what does this expire? Does it, just things, random questions. It's interesting being in social and programmatic majority of my career. I actually used social listening when the vaccines first came out to figure out where there was availability in terms of appointments, because it was just living in the city. It was crazy. But it's really interesting how much you can glean from just listening to the consumer. So I love that piece, the real-time feedback.
Same. It's one of the most powerful feedback loops that we have for it. Absolutely. Yeah.
So in terms of, understood, maybe live shopping doesn't work for everyone. Are there any particular standout verticals doing well on the platform right now?
Yeah, e-com and retail are super leaned in on our platform on it, but there are specific categories, and it's categories that actually have like high inventory or specific kind of inventory. So beauty, apparel, home, outdoor, and kitchen appliances are the top categories of lives that we're seeing. And I think it has a lot to do with the type of inventory, the type of hosts / creators / influencers that you have, and then also the availability of the products, whether it's online or in a store. So those are where we're seeing the most adoption of live, and we hope to expand that. I think in a couple of years we'll be talking about way more categories.
Oh, way more. I believe it. I think what's interesting, and Chris said it earlier, we're early in the space, and I think this is us talking about this now. It'll be interesting to hear it back a year later, 2 years later from now, where it becomes such a commonplace, maybe another ad unit, but who knows, like just something as simple as, I feel like every year since throughout my career, there's been a year of something, right? It's the year of mobile, the year of, IDFA, the year of whatever. And this is, I feel like, that we're starting in the year of live shopping. And I think the brands that are testing now and learning now will be that much more prepared for when adoption really does spike.
Literally, you could not have taken the words out of my mouth. That's exactly what I would say. And when you see the trends outside of the US and Asia, and if you think we're maybe a few years behind, like that, exactly that, like it's infancy, but the ones that learn it now and are doing it now and adopting it now, they will be way ahead in a few years.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons we're talking about it now is because I read an article recently that validates this, but China's growth, they grew and they had over 280% growth in sales revenue from live shopping in just 3 years.
Yeah. So I think we wrote the same thing. Was it McKinsey?
Yeah, McKinsey. Yeah. Yes. Exactly. Yes, the McKinsey article, and it's crazy to just look at that, and so. Will that happen in the US? We'll see, but it's all about who's leaned in and who's adopting on the consumer side. But it really is interesting. Year one, it was like so small, and then year two, and then year three, and it's like there really is that tipping point for it to reach peak, or maybe it's not even in peak right now over in China. But yeah, we have a ways to go. But I think we're in that early phase to start talking about it,
and it's incredibly exciting. It's a really, really exciting experience overall. Both on the consumer side as well as on the marketing side. So very excited about it.
Same. And so for our brand marketers out there, Kat, I'll ask you if you could give advice to brands, small businesses and big brands alike regarding live shopping, what would it be?
I think we already said it. I would say just jump in. Yep. Right now is the time to jump in. It's at the beginning, but imagine a future where like live shopping can happen across all the platforms and more moments and places. And I would say, just go for it. Experiment now, and you will be so ready for the future.
Yes, I agree. I think the takeaways are understand your goal, because live shopping can play a bigger part of, or play a role in a bigger part and a bigger initiative for brands. Listen to your customers, the feedback that they're providing. I think that's so important. And understanding within live shopping itself that the role it plays. Is it an access point? Is it an engagement focus? Is it a vehicle for checkout and to drive sales? So thinking about it strategically and keeping that measurement framework in mind, bring it back to us.
think we could have a whole session on the measurement framework.
Yes, we don't have time for a measurement framework discussion, unfortunately, but fortunately for our viewers, probably they're like, oh no, thank you. So I guess so those are the questions I had for you today, Kat. And I'd love to just know personally from you, what are you online shopping for these days?
Oh my goodness. So I have two daughters, they are 8 and 9, and they tell me that everything is now, they call it aesthetic preppy. I'm actually not sure what that means, but we are shopping on lots of sites for this aesthetic preppy clothes. So things like Love Shack Fancy, Brandy Melville, Roller Rabbit. These are the brands that they are right now obsessed over. So we spend a lot of time and money on these shops recently.
That's fantastic. I've myself have succumbed to the beauty craze of now that, and I think now that we were talking about this earlier, but it is really interesting how to bring it full circle and relate to real life, the technology with figuring out what products will work for your skin type and what's good, and not only for your skin type, but what's good to layer on top with like your moisturizer and your foundation and all of that. I've learned so much in live shopping from this, just creators anecdotally, just talking about, as a makeup artist, this is why I chose these products. You have to look at the ingredients and see what it leads with. And it was very educational. And so I'm online shopping a lot for beauty products that now that I know what fits my face and my skin type.
That's incredible. I think I'd rather be doing that, but it's okay.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And I also want to know, what are you personally and professionally excited for this year?
No, I mean, this year it's honestly like moving past, well, I don't know if we're actually past it, but moving past the worst part of COVID is exhilarating. So I think professionally, I'm super excited about the future of work. The possibility of this hybrid model. Like before, our culture was super in the office. Now there's like this possibility of hybrid, and that's going to allow for a lot of productivity as well as flexibility, and that is super exciting professionally. And also personally, I think after 2 years of we haven't traveled, we haven't gone anywhere, and I just my dream is to show my children the US, every state in the US by the time they go to college. So we're going to start doing that again. So I think those are the two things that I'm most excited about. It's going to be a great year. I feel it.
I feel it too. Is Meta does Meta have plans to go back to the office?
Yeah, no, we are back in the office. Yeah, but we are, like I said, more of a flexible model. So
nice. Amazing. Yeah. We're Chris and we are fully remote, and
also amazing. I
need to stay that way for a while, hopefully.
Yeah.
That's also amazing.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys saw earlier, I actually had my dog came up into my lap as I'm like trying to do the job. It was cute. He wanted to play ball, but not exactly the time or place.
But see, now we're used to that stuff, and it's lovely.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's endearing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Kat. Any parting words of wisdom or advice for this crowd? You obviously have a lot of brand marketers sitting here listening to what you're saying. We would love for them to work with you. Is there an easiest path to how to do that?
The easiest path to how to, I mean, everyone, all the brand marketers have contacts in Meta, and just know that we are super excited to work with everyone. And as Kristen, I think she said it best when she said, when it comes to live shopping, know your goal and know that we're here to support you, as are many, many partners like yourselves. And we're happy to make this work for everyone. So awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.